The knife glinted in the candlelight as I cut into the anniversary cake. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of what I thought was love. The restaurant buzzed around us, other couples laughing, clinking glasses, living their happy lives. My husband Paul reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. I smiled back at him, the way I always did. His phone buzzed. Again. The 5th time that evening. "Go ahead," I said. It might be important. But I already knew who it was. I had known for months. Paul smiled apologetically and checked his phone. The same glow I'd seen on his face when he looked at it in the dark of our bedroom, thinking I was asleep. The same glow when he said he was working late. The same glow that had slowly killed something inside me. "Rebecca," he said suddenly, putting down his phone. "I need to tell you something." The waiter approached with 2 flutes of champagne. "Your anniversary special, compliments of the house." We thanked him, but the bubbles seemed to mock me now. 15 years. 3,652 days of building a life. And I knew, with absolute certainty, what was coming next. "I'm leaving you," Paul said, his voice steady. Too steady. Rehearsed. "I've fallen in love with someone else." I nodded slowly, taking a small sip of champagne. "Who is she?" His eyes darted away, then back to mine. It's Lisa." "Lisa. My younger sister. My only sister." I felt the room tilt slightly, though I'd barely touched my drink. It wasn't the revelation that stunned me, I had figured out the affair weeks ago. It was his cruelty. Our anniversary dinner. A public place where I couldn't scream or break down. "She's pregnant," he added, as if ripping off a bandage. I set down my glass carefully, making sure it didn't make a sound against the white tablecloth. I'd spent 15 years becoming a master of hiding my emotions. Tonight would be my greatest performance. "I see," I said quietly. "And when were you planning to leave?" "Tomorrow. We found a place." "I'm sorry it had to be like this, but you're not sorry it happened," I finished for him. He had the decency to look down at his plate. "No. I'm not." What Paul didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment for much longer than he realized. He had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, then. Confused by my calm, he hesitantly clinked his glass against mine. As I sipped the expensive champagne, I allowed myself a small, secret smile. Paul and Lisa thought they had won. They had no idea they had just started a game I had been preparing to play for months. And I never, ever lost. 6 months earlier, I had first noticed the change in Paul. Little things. The way he suddenly cared about his appearance after years of comfortable neglect. The new cologne. The gym membership he actually used. The business trips that had never required overnight stays before. I'm not naive. I'm a corporate lawyer who spent 15 years spotting lies in depositions. But I wanted to be wrong about my husband. Then came the night he kissed me on the cheek instead of the lips. A small thing. Tiny. But in 15 years, he had always kissed me on the lips. Always. Something wrong? I asked. Just tired, he said, not meeting my eyes. That night, I lay awake beside him as he slept, studying the face I had woken up to for a decade and a half. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. One text. Then another. He had never changed his password. It was my birthday. How sweetly ironic. The texts were from Lisa. My sister. The same sister who had been coming over more often lately. Who had been hugging Paul a little too long when she arrived and left. Who had been asking oddly specific questions about our marriage. Miss you already. Can't wait until we can stop hiding. I placed the phone back exactly as I had found it. I didn't cry. I didn't wake him up for a confrontation. Instead, I went to the guest bathroom where he couldn't hear me, turned on the shower, and sat on the floor as the water ran. I needed to think. Lisa had always wanted what I had. My toys when we were children. My clothes as teenagers. My first boyfriend in high school. And now, my husband. By morning, I had formed the beginning of a plan. "You look tired," said May, my assistant, as I walked into my office the next day. "Rough night," I replied, setting down my bag. "Is Jack in today?" Jack Harmon was my law firm's private investigator. A former cop with questionable ethics but exceptional skills. We kept him on retainer for corporate espionage cases, but I had something more personal in mind. "Morning, Rebecca," Jack said when I entered his cluttered office an hour later. "What brings you to my humble corner?" I closed the door. "I need surveillance." "Personal matter." Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. That's why I liked him. My husband and my sister. "I need confirmation, times, places. Everything." He nodded slowly. "You sure you want to know?" "I already know. I need evidence." "This isn't for a divorce case?" I shook my head. "No. Just for me." Jack studied me for a moment. "This is off the books, then?" "Completely. I'll pay you personally." He nodded. "I'll start today." As I turned to leave, Jack called after me. "Rebecca?" "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I had no room for sympathy right now. Back in my office, I opened my computer and began researching. Not divorce lawyers, I had plenty of those in my contacts. No, I was researching something else entirely. Financial structures. Hidden accounts. And the weaknesses in Paul's business, a real estate development company he had built from nothing with my family's money as initial capital. My phone buzzed. Lisa was calling. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hey sis," I said, injecting warmth into my voice. "What's up?" "Just checking in," she said. "Thought maybe we could do lunch this week?" The audacity was almost admirable. "Almost." "That would be great," I lied. "I've missed you." We made plans for Thursday. I needed to see her face to face. Needed to look into the eyes of the sister who was sleeping with my husband and see what I'd missed all these years. After hanging up, I pulled out a small notebook, nothing digital that could be traced, and began making lists. People who knew both Paul and me. Friends and enemies of each. Business associates. Family members. Each person was a potential pawn in what was becoming an increasingly complex game. My office door opened, and May stuck her head in. "Your 10 o'clock is here." I closed the notebook. "Send them in." No one who saw me that day would have guessed that inside, something fundamental had changed. The person I had been for 15 years, trusting, loyal Rebecca, was dead. In her place was someone new. Someone with nothing left to lose. Lisa was 10 minutes late to lunch, as usual. She swept into the restaurant wearing a dress I recognized. I had given it to her for her birthday last year. "Sorry I'm late," she said, kissing my cheek. "Traffic was awful." I smiled. "No problem." I ordered wine. She sat across from me, brushing her hair back in that familiar gesture we shared. People always said we looked alike, though she was 5 years younger. Same dark hair, same green eyes. But where I was always described as elegant or composed, Lisa was vivacious and free-spirited. Our parents' creative wild child to my responsible firstborn. "So," she said, accepting a glass of wine from the server, "how are things with you and Paul?" The question hung in the air between us. Was she fishing for problems? Seeking reassurance that I had no suspicions? Or was it the simple sadism of watching me talk about a marriage she was secretly destroying? "We're good," I said, studying her face. "Busy, but good. Our anniversary is coming up in a few months." Something flickered across her face, guilt, perhaps, or calculation. 15 years, I continued. Hard to believe, isn't it? Lisa took a large sip of wine. That's amazing. Any special plans? Paul's planning something. Being very secretive about it. I leaned forward. What about you? Anyone special in your life? She blushed. Actually blushed. Nothing serious. You've seemed happier lately. I thought maybe you'd met someone. Lisa fiddled with her napkin. Just enjoying life. We moved on to safer topics after that, her art gallery job, my recent cases. Throughout lunch, I watched her. The sister I had helped through college. The sister I had let live with us when she was broke. The sister who now glanced at her phone every few minutes, likely checking for messages from my husband. When the check came, I insisted on paying. My treat, I said. You don't have to. I want to. I handed my credit card to the server. Actually, I have a favor to ask. Would you be able to water our plants next month when Paul and I go to the Hamptons for the weekend? It was a test. There was no Hamptons trip planned. Lisa hesitated. Sure. When exactly? The 12th through the 14th, Paul has that conference, remember? She nodded too quickly. Right, yes. The conference. Of course I can help. There was no conference. But now I knew Lisa was aware of Paul's schedule, aware enough to know there was no real business event that weekend. I kissed her goodbye in the parking lot, promising to call soon. As I watched her drive away, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Got something? My office. Tomorrow. I drove back to work, my mind churning. 15 years of marriage, 32 years of sisterhood. All built on what now seemed like quicksand. That night, Paul came home late again. Client dinner, he explained, kissing my cheek. How was it? I asked, looking up from my book. Productive. Boring. He loosened his tie. Did you eat? Had lunch with Lisa today, I said casually. We had such a good time I wasn't very hungry for dinner. Paul paused, just for a fraction of a second. That's nice. How is she? Happy, I said, turning a page in my book. Very happy these days. Jack's evidence was thorough, as expected. Photos of Paul and Lisa entering a hotel downtown. Timestamped surveillance footage from the coffee shop near her apartment, showing them holding hands across a table. Credit card statements showing jewelry purchases, jewelry I had never received. There's more, Jack said, sliding a folder across his desk. Inside were bank statements. Large transfers from Paul's business account to a new account I didn't recognize. He opened it 3 months ago, Jack explained. Been moving money ever since. I studied the numbers. Nearly $2 million. Not our entire net worth, but a significant portion of his liquid assets. There's something else, Jack said, looking uncomfortable. Your sister's name is on the account. Of course it was. I closed the folder. Thank you, Jack. What are you going to do? I stood up. That's not your concern. Rebecca, he said, as your friend, not your employee, don't do anything you'll regret. I smiled thinly. I never do. That night, I created a new email account under a fake name and sent messages to 3 people, Martin Greaves, Paul's biggest competitor, Caroline Winters, a business reporter known for exposing corporate scandals, and Detective James Rivera, an old college friend who now worked in financial crimes. To Martin, I hinted at irregularities in Paul's recent development project, information I had gleaned from the files in Paul's home office. To Caroline, I suggested she look into the funding sources for the same project. To James, I simply asked for a coffee meeting, old friends catching up. Seeds planted, I turned my attention to Lisa. Unlike Paul, my sister had few defenses. No corporate structure, no significant assets to protect. Just her reputation at the gallery where she worked, a gallery that displayed primarily moral art and was owned by the wife of our county's most conservative judge. I sent an anonymous letter to myself at my office, crafted to look like it was mistakenly delivered to the wrong Rebecca. Inside was a thank you note for a generous donation to a political organization known for its radical views entirely opposite to those of Lisa's employer. I made sure the letter specifically mentioned Lisa's name as the person who had recommended this worthy cause. When it arrived, I would accidentally leave it on my desk when Lisa came to visit. Small steps. Subtle manipulations. The kind that could be explained away as coincidences or misunderstandings. But first, I needed to secure my own position. The next morning, I met with my firm's senior partner, Eleanor Harding. I may need a leave of absence soon, I told her. Personal reasons. Eleanor frowned. Anything I should be concerned about? My marriage is ending, I said simply. I'd prefer to keep the details private. Her face softened. Eleanor had been through a bitter divorce herself years ago. Take whatever time you need. Your clients can be redistributed temporarily. There's one more thing, I added. I may need to transfer some assets. Strictly above board, but I want to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Of course. I'll have Gerald in accounting help you. Discreetly. I thanked her and returned to my office, where I began the process of securing funds that Paul couldn't access. Legitimate transfers into accounts solely in my name. A safety net, just in case my plan went sideways. Because revenge, I was discovering, was not a straight line. It was a web, with multiple threads all leading back to a center that only I could see clearly. The next few weeks required the performance of a lifetime. I played the role of unsuspecting wife flawlessly. I smiled when Paul came home. Asked about his day. Never questioned his late nights or weekend golf games. I even bought new lingerie and initiated sex one night, noting how he closed his eyes throughout, probably imagining my sister. Meanwhile, my plans advanced steadily. Martin Greaves began asking questions about Paul's business dealings. Caroline Winters requested an interview with Paul's company about their funding sources. Detective Rivera agreed to look into some concerning patterns I had noticed in Paul's business. But the real masterpiece was what I did with Lisa. I'm worried about Paul, I told her over coffee one afternoon. He seems distracted lately. Lisa shifted in her seat. Oh? How so? Just distant. And there are these money transfers I don't understand. Her eyes widened slightly. Money transfers? From our joint account, I lied. Large amounts to some business account. When I asked, he got defensive. Lisa took a quick sip of her latte. I'm sure it's nothing. Business stuff. Probably, I agreed. But then there's this woman who keeps calling the house and hanging up when I answer. Now Lisa looked genuinely confused. This part wasn't in her script. A woman? I nodded solemnly. Happens at least twice a week. Paul says it's just a telemarketer, but... I let my voice trail off. But what? Lisa asked, leaning forward. It's silly, but last week, I could have sworn I heard her say his name before she hung up. Lisa's face went through a complex series of emotions: confusion, concern, jealousy. She thought she was Paul's only affair. Now I had planted the seed that she might just be one of many. Have you asked him directly? Lisa asked, her voice strained. I shook my head. I don't want to be that suspicious wife. Besides, I'm probably imagining things. Right, Lisa said, distracted now. Probably nothing. That evening, Paul came home later than usual, looking agitated. I could only imagine the conversation he'd had with Lisa that afternoon. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, he said tersely. Just work stress. I nodded sympathetically. Anything I can do? No, he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. Sorry. Just tired. I understand, I said, touching his arm gently. Why don't you go relax? I'll bring you a drink. As I mixed his favorite whiskey sour in the kitchen, I smiled to myself. The first cracks were appearing. Now to widen them. The next day, I left my office accidentally unlocked while at lunch. On my desk was a file labeled personal, confidential, containing printouts of text messages between Paul and a number I'd created on a burner phone. The messages were vague but suggestive, clearly not between Paul and Lisa. My assistant May, who I knew had always had a soft spot for Lisa, would certainly mention seeing the file when Lisa called the office, as she often did. When I returned from lunch, the file was in exactly the same position, but I noticed the edges of the papers inside were slightly disturbed. Someone had looked at them. That evening, Paul received a call during dinner. He checked the screen, frowned, and let it go to voicemail. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Nobody important," he muttered. His phone buzzed again with a text. I pretended not to notice how quickly he turned it face down on the table. The game was evolving. Now Lisa was suspicious of Paul, and Paul was caught between two women, neither of whom knew exactly what the other knew. But I knew everything. 3 months after discovering the affair, I had assembled all my pieces. Jack had provided me with comprehensive evidence of the affair and the financial impropriety. Martin Greaves was actively investigating acquiring parts of Paul's company, sensing weakness. Caroline Winters had written a preliminary article raising questions about the funding of Paul's latest project. Detective Rivera had opened an informal inquiry into possible financial irregularities. Most crucially, I had driven a wedge between Paul and Lisa. My invented other woman had caused arguments between them, arguments I learned about from the recording device I had hidden in Paul's car. Lisa was demanding explanations that Paul couldn't provide because there was no other woman. Now it was time for the next phase. I hired a makeup artist to come to my office one morning. "I have an important client meeting," I explained as she applied subtle bruises around my eye and cheek, bruises that looked a few days old, expertly covered with makeup that was now wearing off. When the artist left, I called Paul's assistant. "Is he available for lunch today? I'd like to surprise him." An hour later, I walked into his office building. I had timed my visit perfectly. The quarterly board meeting had just ended, and the hallway was filled with board members and senior staff. "Rebecca," Paul said, clearly surprised to see me. "What are you doing here?" I approached him, allowing my hair to fall slightly away from my face, revealing the edge of the fake bruise. His eyes widened. Several people nearby paused in their conversations, noticing my appearance. "Can we talk privately?" I asked, my voice deliberately small. Paul quickly ushered me into his office, closing the door. "What happened to your face?" he demanded. I touched the bruise gently. "You don't remember?" "Remember what? Did you fall?" I stepped back from him, allowing fear to show on my face. "Please, Paul. Not here." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Rebecca, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't do that to you." "It's okay," I said softly. "I know you didn't mean it. You were angry about the credit card bill." "What? I never." A knock at the door interrupted him. His assistant poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but your next appointment is here." "Cancel it," Paul snapped. The assistant's eyes darted to my face, then away quickly. "Yes, sir," she said, closing the door. Paul turned back to me. "You need to tell me what's going on right now." I allowed tears to fill my eyes. "I forgive you, Paul. But maybe we should talk to someone. Get help." "This is insane," he said, his voice rising. "I never touched you." I flinched dramatically, causing him to immediately lower his voice. "Rebecca, please," he said, now pleading. "Whatever is happening, we need to be honest with each other." The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded meekly. "You're right. I should go. We'll talk at home." I left his office, making sure to walk past as many people as possible on my way out. By tomorrow, rumors would be circulating about Paul Marshall and his bruised wife. That evening, Paul came home in a rage. What the hell was that today? I sat calmly on the sofa. What was what? The bruise. The accusations. In front of my colleagues. I tilted my head. I didn't accuse you of anything, Paul. I said I forgive you. For something I didn't do. I stood up slowly. Like I haven't been forgiving you for things you have been doing? He froze. What does that mean? It means I know about Lisa, I said quietly. I know about the hotel rooms, the secret account, the money transfers. I know everything. Paul's face drained of color. Rebecca. Save it, I cut him off. I'm not interested in explanations or apologies. Then what do you want? He asked cautiously. I smiled. I want our anniversary dinner. At Blue, where you proposed. I want one perfect night before we decide how to proceed. He stared at me, clearly trying to process this unexpected response. You want dinner? Yes. Next Friday. Our actual anniversary. I stepped closer to him. 15 years, Paul. Doesn't that deserve a proper goodbye? Confusion and relief battled on his face. He had expected screaming, demands for divorce, threats of financial ruin. Instead, I was asking for dinner. Okay, he said slowly. Dinner at Blue. Thank you, I said, kissing his cheek. I'll make the reservation. As I walked upstairs to our bedroom, I heard him on the phone in the study, undoubtedly calling Lisa to report this bizarre development. Little did he know, I had already spoken to Lisa that afternoon. I think Paul's going to leave me, I had told her, crying convincingly. He's been so distant, and I found hotel receipts. Lisa had been trapped between her role as my sister and her role as Paul's lover. Maybe it's for the best if you're both unhappy, she had suggested weakly. Maybe, I had agreed. But I'm going to give it one last chance. Our anniversary is next week. By telling both of them the same half-truth, that I knew something was wrong but was giving the marriage one last effort, I had ensured they would go along with the anniversary dinner plan. Paul to avoid a messy confrontation, Lisa because her guilt demanded she allow me this final dignity. 1 week. 1 dinner. And then everything would change. The week before our anniversary was strangely peaceful. Paul and I moved around each other carefully, like dancers avoiding collision. He came home at reasonable hours. I prepared meals. We talked about safe topics, the weather, a new restaurant downtown, an upcoming film release. Never about the future. Never about the past. Meanwhile, I finalized my preparations. The article by Caroline Winters was scheduled to drop the day after our anniversary dinner, raising questions about potentially illegal foreign investment in Paul's projects. Detective Rivera had found enough evidence of financial irregularities to justify a formal investigation, which would begin next week. Martin Greaves was positioned to swoop in and acquire Paul's company at a fraction of its worth once the scandal broke. As for Lisa, I had arranged for her to receive an anonymous email with partial evidence of the affair, just enough to suggest that Paul had been talking about their relationship. The email was scheduled for delivery during our anniversary dinner. Everything was in place. The night before our anniversary, I lay awake beside Paul, listening to his breathing. 15 years in the same bed. The smell of his shampoo. The sound of his occasional snore. The warmth of his body inches from mine. For a moment, I felt a pang of something. Not regret, exactly. Perhaps mourning for what I had thought we had. Are you awake? Paul asked suddenly. I considered pretending to be asleep but decided against it. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. I did love you, Rebecca. For a long time. Just not anymore, I finished for him. Another pause. It's complicated. I almost laughed. Complicated. Such a convenient word. Tomorrow's going to be hard, he said. He had no idea. It'll be what it needs to be, I replied. In the darkness, I felt him turn toward me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Now I did laugh, a small, bitter sound. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. He didn't deny it. Get some sleep, Paul, I said, turning away from him. Tomorrow's a big day. I spent the morning of our anniversary at a spa, indulging in treatments I would normally consider frivolous. A massage. A facial. Hairstyled to perfection. Nails painted a deep, blood red. The stylist whistled softly as she finished my hair. Hot date tonight? Anniversary, I said with a smile. Congratulations. How many years? 15. She beamed. That's wonderful. He's a lucky man. That he is, I agreed. Lucky in ways he doesn't even realize yet. I returned home to find Paul gone, a note on the counter, getting my suit cleaned. Meet you at the restaurant. 7 p.m. Perfect. I needed the house to myself. From the back of my closet, I retrieved the dress I had purchased specifically for tonight. Black, elegant, with a subtly plunging neckline. Not my usual style, but tonight wasn't about being usual. At 6, I called a car service. No drinking and driving tonight. Blue was as elegant as I remembered, with its soft lighting and intimate tables. The maitre d' led me to our table, the same one where Paul had proposed 15 years ago. He was already there, standing as I approached. You look beautiful, he said, and I could tell he meant it. Thank you, I replied, taking my seat. The waiter appeared with champagne. To celebrate your anniversary, he explained. Compliments of the house. We thanked him. When he left, an awkward silence fell between us. I ordered your favorite appetizer, Paul said finally. The scallops. I smiled. Thank you. We made stilted conversation until the food arrived. I asked about his work, deliberately mentioning the project that was about to come under scrutiny. He asked about my cases. We talked about a movie we had both seen, separately. It was almost funny, the carefully choreographed normalcy of it all. Then, as the main course arrived, Paul's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, and put it away. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, he said tightly. Just work. But I knew it wasn't work. It was Lisa, receiving the anonymous email, demanding explanations. His phone buzzed again. And again. Maybe you should get that, I suggested. It seems important. Paul hesitated, then excused himself to the restroom. I knew he was calling Lisa. While he was gone, I signaled the waiter for the anniversary cake I had ordered in advance. When Paul returned, his face was tense. Rebecca. Look, I interrupted as the waiter approached with the cake. They remembered our anniversary. The small chocolate cake was decorated with Happy 15th Anniversary in elegant script. The waiter set it between us and discreetly retreated. I picked up the knife, catching the light. Remember our wedding cake? You smashed it in my face. Rebecca, Paul said again, more urgently. I need to tell you something. I already know, I said calmly. About Lisa. About the baby. About everything. He stared at me, shocked. How? I'm a lawyer, Paul. I investigate things for a living. I continued cutting the cake, placing a slice on his plate. I've known for months. Then why, he gestured around us, all this? Because I wanted one last perfect moment before everything falls apart. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it this time, focusing on me. What do you mean, falls apart? I took a small bite of cake. By this time tomorrow, your company will be under investigation for financial fraud. The day after, Martin Greaves will offer to buy you out at a fraction of what it's worth. It will be your only option to avoid bankruptcy and possible criminal charges. Paul's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. Am I? I smiled. Check your email. He pulled out his phone again, scrolled through his messages. I knew what he was seeing, a preview of Caroline Winter's article, sent to him for comment before publication. You did this? I did nothing but reveal the truth, Paul. The questionable investments, the money transfers, the falsified permits. That was all you. His shock turned to anger. You're trying to destroy me. No, I corrected him. I'm ensuring you experience consequences. There's a difference. I'll fight this, he threatened. I'll say you planted evidence, that you're trying to frame me because I'm leaving you. You could, I agreed. But then I'd have to release the recordings of you discussing those illegal investments with your partners. The ones where you specifically mention knowing the money came from questionable sources. His eyes widened. There are no recordings. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? His phone buzzed yet again, more insistently this time. Paul glanced at it. It's Lisa. She's hysterical. Says someone sent her pictures, evidence that I've been talking about our relationship. Says I betrayed her trust. How awful for you both, I said, taking another bite of cake. Affairs are built on such fragile trust, aren't they? Understanding dawned on his face. You're behind that too. I simply smiled. You've been planning this all along, he said slowly. The dinner, the calm acceptance, it was all part of it. Consider it my anniversary gift to you both. Paul leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. You think you've won? That I'll just roll over? I'll take you down with me, Rebecca. I'll make sure everyone knows what a vindictive, manipulative woman you really are. You could try, I acknowledged. But I'm not sure Lisa will stand by you once she sees the evidence I have. What evidence? I reached into my purse and slid a folded paper across the table. Open it. Inside was a printout of a message exchange, seemingly between Paul and another woman, discussing Lisa in crude, dismissive terms. The conversation was entirely fabricated, of course, but Lisa wouldn't know that. This is fake, Paul hissed. Prove it, I challenged. By the way, Lisa already has a copy. His phone began ringing. Lisa calling now, not just texting. You should answer that, I suggested. She sounds upset. Paul stood abruptly. This isn't over. Actually, it is, I said, still calm. One more thing before you go, I've frozen all our joint accounts and transferred my inheritance to a private account. You'll find my lawyer's contact information at the bottom of that page. He'll be in touch about divorce proceedings. Paul stared at me, a mixture of hatred and newfound respect in his eyes. I never knew you could be this cold. You never really knew me at all, I replied. Happy anniversary, Paul. As he stormed out of the restaurant, I signaled the waiter for the check. The night had gone exactly as planned. Well, almost exactly. There was one more act to come. I returned home to find our house dark and empty. Paul hadn't come back, likely he had gone straight to Lisa's apartment to deal with the crisis I had engineered. In our bedroom, I changed out of my dress and removed my makeup. Then I sat at my vanity and recorded a video on my phone. My name is Rebecca Marshall, I began. If you're watching this, it means my plan worked. By now, my husband Paul's business is under investigation. His affair with my sister Lisa has been exposed. And both of them are facing the consequences of their betrayal. I explained everything, the affair, the financial fraud, the elaborate revenge plan. I spoke calmly, methodically, without emotion. I want to be clear, I continued. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or jealousy. This was about justice. Paul didn't just betray our marriage, he stole from investors, falsified documents, and planned to leave me financially vulnerable while enriching himself and his mistress. My sister didn't just sleep with my husband, she conspired with him to take everything I had built. I smiled slightly at the camera. But they underestimated me. They always did. I saved the video to a secure cloud account and set it to automatically email to a list of selected recipients, family members, close friends, certain business associates, if I didn't enter a password every 24 hours. Insurance, in case Paul decided to retaliate in dangerous ways. Then I went downstairs, poured myself a glass of wine, and waited. The call came just after midnight. Lisa, not Paul. What have you done? She sobbed when I answered. Hello, sister, I said calmly. Shouldn't you be comforting your lover right now? Paul's gone crazy, she cried. He says you set him up, that you're trying to destroy his business. He's saying horrible things about me too. Is he? I asked innocently. Like what? Like I was just convenient. That I meant nothing to him. Her voice broke. He showed me messages I supposedly sent to other women about me. But they're fake, Rebecca. They have to be. Do they? I took a sip of wine. How can you be sure? A pause. Because. Her voice faltered. Because he loves me. The way he loved me for 15 years? I asked softly. Until something better came along? She was quiet for a moment. I never meant to hurt you. And yet, you did. Both of you did. What do you want? Lisa asked finally. Money? Paul says you've already taken everything. Not everything, I corrected her. Just what was rightfully mine. As for what I want from you. I considered. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I never want to see or speak to you again. Becca, please, she begged, using my childhood nickname. We're sisters. No, I said firmly. We're not. Not anymore. I ended the call and blocked her number. Then I did the same with Paul's. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, lawyers, investigations, probably more confrontations. But tonight, for the first time in months, I would sleep peacefully. The fallout came swift and merciless, just as I had planned. Caroline Winter's article hit the morning news cycle, detailing questionable financing in Paul's latest development project. By noon, the company's stock had dropped 15%. By closing bell, 30%. My phone rang constantly, mutual friends, Paul's business partners, even his parents. I let most calls go to voicemail. The few I answered received the same response, I'm as shocked as you are. I had no idea. Detective Rivera called to inform me that formal questioning of Paul would begin tomorrow. Just wanted to give you a heads up, he said. Your name might come up. I appreciate that, I replied. But I have nothing to hide. That afternoon, I met with my divorce attorney, Frederick Monahan, a shark who had handled 3 of the messiest high-profile divorces in the state. I laid out everything, the affair, the financial misconduct, the evidence I had gathered. Impressive, Frederick said when I finished. Most clients come to me after the damage is done. You've positioned yourself remarkably well. I had time to prepare, I explained. Indeed. He reviewed my documentation. With this evidence, we can push for an extremely favorable settlement. Given the circumstances, he might agree to avoid more public humiliation. I'm not interested in a settlement, I said. I want everything I'm legally entitled to. No compromises. Frederick smiled coldly. My kind of client. That evening, there was a knock at my door. When I checked the security camera, I saw Lisa standing on the porch, looking disheveled and desperate. I didn't answer. She knocked again, then called through the door. Rebecca, please. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I remained silent, watching her through the camera. Paul's left me, she said finally, her voice breaking. He says it's my fault his company is collapsing. That I must have told you things. She leaned against the door. I didn't, Rebecca. I swear I didn't betray him. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. The police came to his office today, she continued. He's facing criminal charges. And her voice caught, he says I was never anything but a distraction. That the baby was a mistake. I felt a momentary pang at the mention of the baby, my future niece or nephew, who would be born into this mess. But I pushed the feeling aside. That child was not my responsibility. Please, Lisa begged again. I have nowhere else to go. Finally, I approached the door. Go to Mom and Dad, I said through the wood. Her head jerked up at the sound of my voice. Mom and Dad? They'll hate me when they find out. Then you'll have to live with that, I replied. Just like I've had to live with your betrayal. It wasn't just me, she protested. It takes two people to have an affair. And it takes one person to betray her sister, I countered. Go home, Lisa. There's nothing for you here. I heard her sob, then the sound of footsteps retreating down the porch steps. Through the security camera, I watched her get into her car and drive away. For a moment, I felt hollow. This was the victory I had planned, the revenge I had orchestrated. So why didn't it feel more satisfying? 3 days after our anniversary dinner, Paul was formally charged with financial fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. His company's board voted to remove him as CEO. Martin Greaves, as predicted, swooped in with an offer to buy the company at a fraction of its value. I watched it all unfold from a distance, never commenting publicly, never gloating. To the outside world, I was the wronged wife, shocked and devastated by her husband's secret life. A week after the charges, Paul requested a meeting. Against my attorney's advice, I agreed, specifying a public location, a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible when he arrived, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled. The Paul I knew would never have appeared in public this way. Thank you for meeting me, he said as he sat across from me. I nodded but said nothing. I'm guessing you've heard about the charges, he continued. Yes. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. They're going to take everything, Rebecca. The company, the house, even my personal assets. I sipped my coffee, waiting. I've lost Lisa too, he added. Not that it matters now. She was. He trailed off. A mistake? I supplied. A convenient distraction? He winced. I deserve that. You deserve much worse. Paul leaned forward. Is that what this is about? Punishment? Revenge? Justice, I corrected. You were going to leave me with nothing, Paul. After 15 years. After I helped you build your company, supported you through the hard times, invested my family's money in your dreams. I know, he admitted. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Too late. He nodded slowly. I'm facing jail time. My lawyer says 3 to 5 years. I hadn't expected quite that much. I see. There's a way out, he said cautiously. A plea deal. But it requires. He hesitated. Requires what? I prompted. Someone else to take the fall for some of it, he finished. Someone who had access to the company finances, who could have acted alone. I stared at him in disbelief. You want me to take the blame? Not all of it, he clarified quickly. Just enough to reduce my sentence. You have a clean record. First offense. You'd probably get probation. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, he was trying to use me. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me, the wife you cheated on with my sister, the wife you planned to abandon, to commit perjury and accept a criminal record to save you from the consequences of your actions? Put that way, even Paul seemed to recognize the absurdity of his request. I'm desperate, Rebecca. Clearly. What if I told you Lisa lost the baby, he said suddenly. Would that change anything for you? I froze. What? The stress, he explained. The fighting after our anniversary dinner. She started bleeding the next day. Miscarried that night. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. For all my planning, I hadn't intended that. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know the full extent of what you've done, he said, a hint of the old Paul, manipulative, calculating, showing through. Your revenge cost an innocent life. I set down my coffee cup carefully, making sure my hand didn't shake. No, Paul. Your choices cost that innocent life. Your selfishness. Your betrayal. I stood up. Don't contact me again except through my lawyer. As I walked away, he called after me, you won't feel better, you know. Revenge doesn't heal anything. I paused, then turned back to him. This was never about healing. This was about surviving. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Paul, facing criminal charges and financial ruin, had little leverage to contest anything. My attorney pushed for, and received, extremely favorable terms. Lisa tried to contact me several times, calls, texts, even a letter delivered to my office. I ignored them all. Our parents called, confused and hurt by the sudden rift between their daughters. I told them a version of the truth, enough to explain my distance without revealing the full ugly story. Lisa made choices that hurt me deeply, I explained to my mother. I need space. But she's your sister, Mom protested. Family forgives. Not this, I said firmly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Life settled into a new routine. Work kept me busy. Friends, those who had proven loyal through the scandal, provided distraction. I sold the house Paul and I had shared, unable to live with the memories, and bought a sleek downtown condo with views of the city. 6 months after our anniversary dinner, Paul accepted a plea deal, 3 years in a minimum security prison, forfeiture of most assets, restitution to investors. The day of his sentencing, I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as he stood before the judge, humbled and defeated. He didn't see me. I made sure of that. I wasn't there to gloat or to forgive. I was there to witness the end of this chapter of my life. That evening, alone in my new home, I opened a bottle of expensive champagne, the same brand we had drunk at our anniversary dinner. I poured a single glass and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. My phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Rebecca Marshall? A woman's voice I didn't recognize. Yes? This is Nurse Collins from Mercy Hospital. We have your sister, Lisa Grant, in our care. You're listed as her emergency contact. My heart raced. What happened? She was brought in following a suicide attempt, the nurse explained gently. She's stable now, but she's asking for you. The glass of champagne trembled in my hand. I can't. I understand this might be difficult, the nurse continued. But the doctor feels it would be beneficial for her recovery if you could visit. Even briefly. I closed my eyes, seeing Lisa on my doorstep, begging for help. Seeing her as a child, following me everywhere. Seeing her at my wedding, crying happy tears. Ms. Marshall? Are you still there? Yes, I said finally. Tell her I'll come tomorrow. I ended the call and set down the untouched champagne. The taste of victory had soured long ago. Now there was just emptiness and the question that had haunted me for months, what happens after revenge? Mercy Hospital smelled like all hospitals, antiseptic and despair. I followed a nurse down a quiet hallway to Lisa's room. She's been stabilized, the nurse explained. But she's still fragile. Try not to upset her. I almost laughed at that. My mere presence would upset her. But I nodded and stepped into the room. Lisa lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Paler. Tubes ran from her arm to and for drip. When she saw me, her eyes widened with surprise, then filled with tears. You came, she whispered. I stayed by the door. The nurse called. I didn't think you would come. I moved closer to the bed but remained standing. What happened, Lisa? She looked away. I couldn't take it anymore. The guilt. The loneliness. Her voice broke. Losing the baby. I felt that familiar pang again. I heard about that. I'm sorry. Are you? She asked, meeting my eyes. Really? Yes, I said truthfully. I never wanted that. Just everything else, she said bitterly. My relationship. My reputation. My future. You took those things from me first, I reminded her. Lisa nodded slowly. I know. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. What we did to you. She reached for a cup of water on the bedside table, her hands shaking. I found myself stepping forward to help her, steadying the cup as she drank. Thank you, she said when she finished. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. Paul's in prison, she said finally. I know. He blames me, she continued. Says if I hadn't been so demanding, so needy, he wouldn't have made those financial mistakes. That sounded like Paul, always shifting blame. And you? I asked. Who do you blame? Lisa looked down at her hands. Myself. For everything. For wanting what you had. For being so selfish. For. She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. I should have felt satisfaction at her pain. Instead, I felt hollowed out, exhausted by the weight of it all. I don't expect you to forgive me, Lisa continued. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I studied my sister's face, the face so similar to my own. We shared the same blood, the same childhood memories, the same parents. Once, we had shared everything. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said honestly. I don't know if I ever will be. She nodded, more tears falling. I understand. But, I continued, surprising myself, I don't want you dead, Lisa. A small, sad smile crossed her face. That's something, I guess. I sat down in the chair beside her bed. What will you do now? I don't know, she admitted. I lost my job at the gallery. I can't afford my apartment anymore. Mom and Dad offered to let me move home, but... She shook her head. I can't face them every day, knowing what I did. I didn't offer help. Couldn't offer help. But I found myself asking, have you considered leaving town? Starting fresh somewhere new? With what money? She asked. With what job prospects? My name is mud in the art world now, thanks to, she stopped herself. Thanks to me, I finished for her. Go ahead, you can say it. Lisa sighed. We both did terrible things, Rebecca. The difference is, yours were in response to what we did first. It was the closest thing to absolution I was likely to get. Still, it didn't feel like victory. The nurse returned, checking Lisa's vital signs. She needs to rest, she told me quietly. I stood. I should go. Lisa caught my hand. Will you come back? I gently disentangled my fingers from hers. I don't know. At the door, I paused. Take care of yourself, Lisa. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something other than hatred, and for now, that would have to be enough. Life continued. Seasons changed. The scandal surrounding Paul's arrest and conviction faded from public interest, replaced by newer, juicier stories. I threw myself into my work, making partner at the firm the following year. I dated occasionally but kept men at a distance, unable to fully trust again. Paul wrote to me once from prison, a long letter full of apologies and reflections. I read it, then burned it in my kitchen sink, watching the paper curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash. Lisa moved to Seattle, about as far as she could get while staying in the continental U.S. She found work at a small gallery and, according to our mother, was doing better. We didn't speak directly, but on my birthday, she sent a card with a simple message, thinking of you. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. 2 years after our anniversary dinner, I was assigned a high-profile case, defending a tech company against fraud allegations. The irony wasn't lost on me. The difference was, my clients were innocent, victims of a competitor's smear campaign. The case consumed me, providing purpose and direction. When we won, the victory made national news. I was interviewed for legal journals, featured in business magazines. My name became synonymous with corporate defense victories. After the case closed, the tech company's CEO, Daniel Lawson, asked me to dinner. To celebrate, he said. Daniel was different from Paul in every way, thoughtful, straightforward, with an easy laugh and a complete lack of artifice. Over dinner, he talked about his work with the same passion I felt for mine. We argued good-naturedly about legal precedents and corporate responsibility. When he asked about my personal life, I gave him the abbreviated version. Divorced. No children. Complicated family situation. Everyone has complications, he said with a shrug. It's what you do with them that matters. At the end of the evening, he asked if he could see me again. I hesitated. Just dinner, he assured me. No pressure. Something in his eyes, a genuine kindness I hadn't seen in a long time, made me agree. One dinner became 2, then 3. We took things slowly. I kept waiting for the red flags, the warning signs I had missed with Paul. But Daniel was consistently himself, honest, direct, respectful of my boundaries. 6 months into our relationship, he asked about my divorce. We were at his place, cooking dinner together, when the question arose naturally in conversation. It's complicated, I said, my standard response. Daniel handed me a glass of wine. I've got time. So I told him. Everything. The affair with my sister. The betrayal. The elaborate revenge. I didn't portray myself as blameless, I acknowledged the calculated cruelty of my response, the coldness required to execute such a plan. When I finished, Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Do you think less of me now? I asked, prepared for him to recoil from the darkness he had glimpsed. He considered the question seriously. I think you're someone who faced unimaginable betrayal and refused to be a victim. I can't judge the choices you made in that situation. But I wonder if the revenge brought you peace. It was the question I had been asking myself for 2 years. No, I admitted finally. It didn't. Daniel nodded, as if he had suspected as much. What would bring you peace? I had no answer. 3 years after our anniversary dinner, I received a call from my mother. Paul had been released from prison. He's asked about you, she said cautiously. What did you tell him? That you've moved on, she replied. That you're happy now. Was I happy? I had a successful career, a relationship with a good man, financial security. But happiness? That seemed too simple a word for the complex emotions that still churned beneath the surface of my carefully reconstructed life. A week later, I received a letter addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a check for $5 million and a short note. Rebecca. This can't undo what I did, but it represents what I stole from our life together, from your family's investment in my company and the years you supported my dreams. It's taken my time in prison and losing everything to understand the true cost of my actions. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I recognize the harm I caused, not just through the affair, but through years of taking you for granted. I hope you find happiness. Paul. I stared at the check for a long time. It was blood money, in a way. Yet it also represented something I hadn't expected from Paul, genuine acknowledgement of his wrongs. That evening, I showed the letter to Daniel. What should I do with it? I asked. He examined the check. What do you want to do with it? I considered the question. I don't need his money. I don't want it. Then don't keep it, Daniel said simply. Use it for something meaningful. The next day, I established a foundation for survivors of domestic abuse, women who, unlike me, hadn't had the resources or support to escape destructive relationships. I named it after my grandmother, who had shown me what quiet strength looked like. 2 months later, I received another unexpected communication, an email from Lisa. Rebecca. I heard about your foundation. It's a wonderful thing you're doing. I've been in therapy for the past 2 years, working through my issues, my competitiveness with you. My need for validation, my self-destructive patterns. I don't say this expecting forgiveness or redemption. I say it because I want you to know I'm trying to be better. I miss having a sister. I know that's selfish to say after what I did. But it's true. If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here. Love always, Lisa. I read the email several times, uncertain how to respond or whether to respond at all. That night, I discussed it with Daniel as we walked along the waterfront near my condo. Do you miss having a sister? He asked. The question hit me harder than I expected. Yes, I admitted. I do. Then maybe it's worth a conversation, he suggested. Not reconciliation necessarily. Just a conversation. After everything that happened? He stopped walking and turned to face me. Rebecca, you're one of the strongest people I've ever known. You survived betrayal and came out stronger. But there's a difference between strength and hardness. He touched my face gently. Forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying that anger. I knew he was right. The revenge I had orchestrated had brought satisfaction but not peace. The anger I still harbored toward Lisa and Paul was a poison I continued to drink, expecting it to hurt them. The next day, I replied to Lisa's email with a single sentence, I'm coming to Seattle next month for a conference. Maybe we could have coffee. Her response came within minutes, name the time and place. I'll be there. The cafe in Seattle was busy with the afternoon crowd. I arrived early, securing a quiet table in the corner, my heart pounding as if I were about to give a closing argument in court. When Lisa walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She had lost weight. But it was the look in her eyes that was most changed, less frantic, more centered. She spotted me and froze momentarily before approaching the table. Rebecca, she said softly. Thank you for coming. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit down. We ordered coffee. An awkward silence fell between us. You look good, Lisa said finally. Happy? I'm getting there, I replied. You look different. She smiled slightly. Therapy. Lots of it. She stirred her coffee. And medication for the anxiety I never dealt with properly. I nodded, remembering how high-strung Lisa had always been, even as a child. Our parents had called it artistic temperament. I saw the foundation you started, she continued. That's really amazing work. It felt like the right thing to do with the money. Paul's money? She asked hesitantly. Yes. Another silence, heavier this time. Have you seen him? I asked finally. Since he got out? Lisa shook her head. No. He reached out once, but I didn't respond. That chapter of my life is closed. I took a sip of coffee. Mine too. I heard you're with someone, she said. Mom mentioned it. Daniel, I confirmed. We've been together almost 2 years now. Are you happy? She asked, her voice small. The question echoed the one Daniel had asked me about forgiveness, about peace. I'm learning to be, I answered honestly. Lisa looked down at her coffee. I know I have no right to ask this, but, do you think you could ever forgive me? Not now, maybe not for years, but someday? I had asked myself this question countless times over the past 3 years. Each time, the answer had been a resounding no. But sitting here, facing my sister, seeing her genuine remorse, her struggle, her pain, I found the answer had changed without my noticing. I think I've already started to, I said softly. Tears filled Lisa's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. Thank you for saying that. It doesn't mean I forget, I clarified. Or that things go back to how they were. I know, she assured me. I don't expect that. But maybe, I continued, surprising myself, we can build something new. Eventually. She nodded, too emotional to speak. We talked for 2 hours that afternoon, carefully avoiding the most painful topics, focusing instead on safer subjects, our parents, her new job, my foundation. As we prepared to leave, Lisa hesitated, then asked, would it be weird if I hugged you? It would be weird. But I found myself nodding anyway. Her embrace was tentative at first, then desperately tight. I felt her tears against my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she whispered. For everything. I patted her back awkwardly, then stepped away. I know. We said goodbye on the sidewalk outside the cafe, promising to stay in touch. As I watched her walk away, I felt something I hadn't expected, a lightness, as if a weight I had been carrying for years had begun to lift. That night, I called Daniel. I saw Lisa today. How did it go? He asked. Better than I expected, I admitted. We talked. Really talked. I'm proud of you, he said. I know that wasn't easy. It wasn't, I agreed. But it was necessary. For her? For me, I said, realizing the truth of it. I'd been holding on to the anger for so long, it became part of me. But I don't want it to define me anymore. So what now? He asked. I thought about the past 3 years, the pain, the betrayal, the revenge, the hollowness of victory. I thought about the foundation, about Lisa, about Paul. About all the different paths that had led me to this moment. Now, I said, I want to build something new. Something better. Together? Daniel asked softly. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Yes. Together. 5 years after the anniversary dinner where Paul announced he was leaving me for my sister, I stood in the backyard of my new home, watching as Daniel arranged chairs for our guests. More to the left, I called out, laughing as he made an exaggerated show of moving the row precisely 2 inches. Perfectionist, he teased. You knew that when you proposed, I reminded him. He came over and kissed me lightly. And I wouldn't have it any other way. We had been married for a year, having exchanged vows in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family present. Daniel's teenage daughters from his first marriage had been my bridesmaids. My parents had walked me down the aisle. Today's gathering was a celebration of the 5th anniversary of my foundation, which had grown from a single shelter to a nationwide network supporting women rebuilding their lives after trauma. Lisa had flown in from Seattle for the event. She ran the West Coast branch now, using her art background to develop therapy programs. Paul would not be attending. We had spoken only once since his release from prison, a brief, awkward coffee meeting where we had both acknowledged that some wounds were too deep to heal completely. He had remarried and moved to Colorado, starting a small construction company far removed from his former corporate ambitions. They're here, Daniel called, nodding toward the gate where my parents were entering, followed by Lisa. I watched as my sister approached, carrying a wrapped gift. Our relationship would never be what it once was. Too much had happened, too much had been lost. But we had found a new way forward, cautious, respectful, gradually rebuilding trust. Ready? Daniel asked, taking my hand. I looked around at the life I had created from the ashes of betrayal, a loving husband, meaningful work, even a fragile peace with my past. Ready, I confirmed. As my family gathered around me, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The revenge I had so carefully orchestrated had not given me what I truly needed. It was only in letting go of the anger, in choosing to build rather than destroy, that I had found what I was looking for all along. Not revenge. Not even justice. Peace,